Well, here we are at another episode of perSPECtive, a re-record after my goof up, my fuck up with the audio. I forgot to.
That's right. No one has.
What's that?
No one would have had to know.
No one had to know, but I'm gonna let them
No.
know. I goofed. I did a goof, and it didn't record my audio last time. So we're doing it again. We're gonna be talking easy. No, it was simple rule
rules
set with emergent gameplay. But to start us off, this is an episode of perSPECtive where we talk about interesting board games with interesting people, and I think I said that backwards. God, it's been 2 weeks since we've recorded one of these, so I'm doing good. And it's been a long week. Great. Hammond, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Nice to be back on the podcast. Thanks for having me back again.
Absolutely. And you said you're enjoying some time off in at your lake house?
It's a beach house. It's similar to a lake house.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm currently on the south coast of South Australia, about 4 hours from where I live. I've got the beach sort of out through that garage door, and there's farmland over here. It's a very nice place to be.
Okay.
Just away with my partner's family for Easter, yeah.
Nice. Okay. And
because we can do that.
And what games have you been playing recently?
Last weekend I had a little bit of a game weekend with some local friends. We're lucky enough to be able to meet up in person and do that kind of thing. Sorry, rest of the world, we'll all get there. We played Hanja Teutonica, old Andreas Stedding game from 2009 that's just had a big box reprint this year. Mm-hmm. And it's really refreshing to sort of go back to those older school Euros, which kind of do fit in with the theme that we're talking about today, where the sort of round-to-round rules are very simple, and what you're doing every turn isn't that complicated, but the game that emerges from there, just with the interaction and how things pan out, becomes really interesting. Mm-hmm. And engaging.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Also played a couple of Knizia classics that I think were just on a theme. We played Ra, the classic auction game, mm-hmm. By Rainer Knizia. With 5 people, it's a little bit hectic. You never really get the tiles that you want, but it's a great look into both auction games and push your luck mechanisms, as well as Babylonia, which is one of Rainer Knizia's newer titles. Kind of shares DNA from Through the Desert and Samurai. Again, I think that it's definitely going to be a modern classic, that one. It's really streamlined a lot of those older Rainer Knizia pathing games and has made them really, really slick.
I know Max really likes Babylonia a lot. Like, he picked that up and played it, I think, once or twice and was like, this is great, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so smooth, it's so interesting. And I think the thing that sold me, although Rainer Knizia does like to iterate on his titles and sort of bring new spins to things, with Babylonia, even like compare it to Blue Lagoon, which is quite similar, as you actually score as you go, which doesn't seem like much, but it's so much nicer to get at the end of the game and go, oh, I got this many points, and you got this many points, and we know the winner, rather than Blue Lagoon, where you have to do like 2 separate tables of things that add up to over 100 points per player. It's just a bit of a downer at the end of a tight game, I think, to be like, oh, and let's tabulate and see who won.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right, well, that was our game yesterday. It's a Wonderful World.
Mm.
Everything, it was a...
But you can't really score that as you go, but yes.
Yeah, there's no scoring as you go, but it just, well, that was one of our recent games, which now I need to find I'm trying to find the Heritage Edition, but apparently it's like 200 and something on BGG, which is ridiculous.
Telling you it's not worth it.
Oh no, I'm not. That's way too much. It is ridiculous. Oh, we also played Sleeping Gods.
Oh yeah, how was that?
It was a lot of fun. We kind of like just went to the first tutorial and then got through most of like the first one of 3 chapters or whatever they're called. Yeah. It was a lot of fun, really interesting. I like that it's just completely open world and you just go where you want, and it actually is pretty challenging trying to manage all
so
this.
do you feel the game punishes you if you decide to just go off and you're not ready to encounter things?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
But you do have the choice in things too, where it's like there was an area we went to and we had an option on something, and it was like we probably are gonna have to fight something that we can't handle, and we had the choice of leaving, but we decided to say whatever, let's just go for it and see what happens. And it was hard. It was super hard, but it's nice to know that you always have, like, I think at least in all the ones that we saw that we thought there was going to be some type of difficult challenge, we had the option of bailing if we were like, we probably shouldn't be here right now.
Yeah. And even with it being difficult, like the one fight that we did, we pretty much lost all but 2 or 3 of the 8 people.
Yeah,
but
9 people.
9 people, and but it was still really like we weren't out of the game. We were able to pretty easily heal ourselves back up and keep playing, which was good. It didn't feel like, oh god, we just screwed up and now it's just over. So I can't wait to continue it, because the story's gonna, right now, like with how little we've kind of explored, it almost feels like separate. It doesn't feel like a full story yet. So I guess we'll see as we kind of like keep exploring and finding new things.
It folds out.
Yeah.
You got some people behind you?
They've just come back from lobster fishing, so we're going to see if we get lobsters for lunch or not.
Oh,
Nice.
Okay. Nice.
Speaking of, let's see.
Oh,
What's
there
you
is
do?
a lobster.
Yeah, so
Speaking of campaign games, since the last time we talked, Hammond, I have now got a new obsession. And
what's your obsession?
I'm super addicted to Arkham Horror, the card game now.
It's really good.
I've
only played the first maybe couple of cycles or whatever you call them. But yeah, I found it really interesting. I just didn't have enough people to play it with me locally, and I didn't really like solo. It was fine, but it just wasn't for me solo.
Right. It's been great so far. I kind of like bought it on a whim. Like I was telling myself I would never get into another card game ever again, and then I bought the core set and I started playing. It's like, oh my god, this is great. And then got a lot of the Mythos packs and have all like the character cards and binders now, and all I want to do is play.
That sounds great.
It reminds me of like the Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh collections you had as a kid. Just like they're all in the binders, and you're like, all right, here we go.
Well, speaking of like card games too, I also picked up Millennium Blades in a trade. Have you played that one before, Hammond?
I have. So just for people that might not have played, it's a bit of a weird one that people might not have come across. It's got that real-time rounds at the beginning where you're trading cards. It's kind of simulating that CCG experience, buying cards from a market that simulate like blind decks, and then trading with other people. And you're assembling a deck and a collection, and then you go and you play like a tournament round with those cards that you've collected. It's super interesting, and I think unlike anything else, it really captures that feel of playing one of those CCG games. If anyone's ever played Magic or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh, especially anything that has those blind decks, just trying to like throw all your money at the shop and try and buy the cards that work for you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to like try it out, just because like I grew up on TCGs and CCGs, and like you were saying, the design for it like really replicates that whole experience really well. So I'm really looking forward to getting it to the table at some point. And the amount of cards in there too are insane. There's so many.
And possibly the best thing is those wads of cash.
Yeah.
The payment is just like 10 stacks of money like wrapped in a little sticker, but they're so satisfying to throw around.
Yeah, it's like the one implementation of paper money that works. You're slapping a wad of cash out on the table. It's like, I will take all your booster packs, please. Thank you. Really looking forward to that one.
Millennium Blades. I didn't really look. I haven't looked into that one.
We'll play it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they've just recently fulfilled another. They do Kickstarters quite regularly with more expansions. I think they've just fulfilled like a super giant big box kind of one with everything.
That's the one I got. That's the one I got in a trade. The collusion expansion. Yeah.
Collusion expansion.
Mm-hmm. It's 2 giant boxes and 1 box is empty, and they gave it to you specifically because they were like, if you're gonna sleeve all these cards, you need both these boxes, or you can fit everything in 1 box unsleeved.
Jeez.
So,
okay.
yeah, the boxes are like feudum size, Ryan.
Good lord.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
And it's just basically a brick of cards.
Yeah, it's
So-
a massive bricks
So
of
it's
cards.
very heavy.
It's super heavy. If she's one that can't leave me alone, she's hanging out. She's gonna be on camera now.
Well, talking about. God, it's a horrible segue. Talking about card games with easy rule sets and emergent gameplay.
Mm.
I'm good at segues.
I mean,
Mine, and one that Keegan and I played last month. I don't know if it was last month before that. Glory to Rome. That one is fairly easy to actually, like, on your turn. It's pretty simple. What you were, God, I'm trying to remember now what it was. It's been a bit since we played.
you can either be a lead. You can choose to think or to lead. And if you think, you draw cards, and if you lead, you play a card. And based on what role that card has, you get to do an action with it. But the cool part about the game is that even if it's not your turn, you're constantly playing, because if you are not the leader, after a person plays their card down to take an action, if you have a identical roll card in your hand or a wild, you can also play that down and also take those actions. So you're not ever waiting for your turn to come around. You're constantly playing the game.
Yeah, if you just set yourself up so you can always follow on other people's turns, yeah, you can have a really good game.
Yeah, and there's quite a bit of player interaction going on, and it can be a very mean game if you wanted to, and but just kind of like building up some of that engine to whatever strategy you might be trying to go for is interesting, and you could go like the complete neutral route and try to just never deal with people, or you can go like really dig and just start like destroying everyone's cards, and so it's an interesting.
I can't remember the role now. The red cards that let you take cards from the pool in the middle and take cards from players are super mean.
Mm-hmm. There's ones that like destroy your opponent's cards and steal them, and but it's
me. I think the it's very I can't think of the word. Yes, there's so many multi-use cards. So every card you can use to do almost every action in the game in a different way. It's like a little bit too much for me, but I know other people really enjoy that flexibility where you can use this card to build, or you can use it like you tuck it to one side of the card it's something, and to the other side it's something else. Yeah, that really adds that flexibility, I think, as well.
Mm-hmm. It adds such like a. If you start going one strategy, you're not kind of just stuck in a certain things based on the cards, because you like all the cards do like all the different, so many different things that the cards can do. You can just start changing up really quickly, and you're not like waiting to draw certain cards too.
Yeah, I think the thing that is like one thing that will take people getting used to if they're not used to games specifically is the fact there's no discard pile in that game. I know, like, the first time I played it, I was looking at the rules, like, so where do these cards go when they're done? Oh, in the middle, and now they're just available to anybody? Okay, that's weird, but it's a super interesting game. I like that one a lot.
Yeah. We'll have to play it again soon. It's been a while.
Yeah,
and I want to play with more people.
Yeah, I want to play with, like, 5.
Because our one game, we ended up just, like...
we just played 2-player.
We played 2-player, but we both ended up like really early on getting the thing that like you couldn't attack each other basically, and so it just became a race.
A 2-player one-on-one.
Yeah, and if you play like that designer's games as like that, Glory to Rome is definitely more for more people, and then his other bigger card game Innovation, that's definitely the better option for a 2-player game. I don't know if you've played that one, Hammond, have you?
I have a long time ago. Actually, I think I played it. I might have played on Board Game Arena last year at some point. More recently, Carl Chudyak's designs don't really sit well with me in general. I appreciate them, but they're just not for me. I like Matai. I kind of like as it is really that slimmed down Glory to Rome, and that's probably really good at 3-ish players. But yeah, I think Glory to Rome, 3 and 4 players, you really need it for that interaction because so much of that game is the following actions.
Yeah.
And if you're only having one turn where you're not actually playing, you don't really get that opportunity to really use that mechanic.
Yeah, agreed. We'll have to play his new game whenever we get it in because it got delayed, called Good Puppers.
Yeah,
So
right.
it's very different from his other games, and it's all dog themed. So we'll see if it's as complicated.
Was the Good Puppers the one that was on that ship that they all like fell into the ocean?
Yep.
Oh,
the container fell in the ocean, and all the games got ruined.
That sucks.
Hammond, you go next for another game.
What else? I also played a couple of goat-themed games.
Goat
Are we
games?
on to the topic? Are we talking about games we've played, or are we talking topics? Who cares?
What's your topic? What's your
I've been
topic?
What was that? Sorry, Keegan?
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. I've also played some Scapegoat recently, which has been getting a bit of buzz around the place. So it is I suppose you could call it a social deduction game. It's by designer John Perry, who did Airland and Sea a couple of years ago, a little 2-player 16-card battler game, which is very interesting. So it's published by Indie Boards and Cards, and it is a nice spin on the social deduction thing. So you say you've got all 4 or 5 people, you roll a dice, and on the back of each player card, it kind of says who you're trying to pin the crime on. So the theme is like really cute little anthropomorphic goats that have completed a heist, and you're trying to decide who you're going to pin the crime on to take the fall, or who's going to be the scapegoat. And so you look on the back of each player card, and depending on the dice roll combo, it says, so mine might say the yellow players who are after, Keegan, maybe yours says also the yellow player, and then Ryan looks at his and it says the blue player. So the idea is trying to work out who's on your team without trying to tip off the person you're all trying to pin it on. So in that example, Ryan's probably the person we're trying to pin it on because he's got a different objective to the rest of us, but no one really knows. And it's really smart in that basically all you're doing on a turn is you're going to a location, which usually involves swapping cards or looking at other people's cards and doing a card trade. And so just reading what other people are putting down or what you've seen in other people's hands, trying to work out who they're gunning for, I suppose. But the best thing about it is it's very paranoid inducing, but not in a stressful way like a Resistance. It kind of has a nicer feel, but if someone's paranoid enough, there's an action called Go to the Cops, and if you go to the cops, the scapegoat wins regardless. So if you're the scapegoat, great, but if you happen to be on the rest of the team, then you've let the scapegoat win. So if anyone goes to the cops, the scapegoat wins. So it's really so it's like treading that balance. Like, do I just think everyone's out to get me? But if they're not, then I've lost the game anyway. It's super interesting.
I just looked it up. The art is really cool on it. I like it. It looks
I'm not sure
very
if I like the.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm not sure if I like the sexy goat.
In the red dress.
In the red dress, it's a little bit over the top. But I suppose it does go with the theme. I don't think it's not really over-sexualized goat, but
that'd be
very femme fatale.
Femme gotale.
Wow. Okay.
And we also played another little goat-themed game from Japan called Goat and the Goats, It's by Hisashi Hayashi, who's the designer. You'd know their games from like Yokohama, Metro X. I think they might have done Trains as well. So a lot of really interesting. So I think that I describe every game as interesting because they're the games that I play. Those really great Japanese games that often make it into English printing. So it's a little simple card game. You're just cute little goats, and you just want to make sets of goats and make the biggest set and claim like a number. There's numbers between like 4 and 9. So if you can make like a set of 9 goats, you can claim the 9 card of that color. The interesting thing about it is on your turn you can play as many cards of one number as you like. So you can play as many 2s as you've got in your hand, and then at the end of your turn you just draw 2 cards because you played 2 cards. Say if you played the number 3, any number of 3 cards, you get to draw 3 cards. It gets a bit more challenging as you get up to 4 and 5. If you only play, for example, 1 5 card, there aren't many in the deck. You have to draw 5 cards, but then as soon as you go over 8 cards, you start getting negative points. So you need those big numbers to help you get up to the higher peaks of the mountains, but you have to basically clear your hand out before you use them. Otherwise, you're going to have excess cards, and it's it's a really fine balancing act, I suppose you could call it, like Goats on a Mountain.
Goats on a Mountain.
That sounds.
I don't
really
think there's I don't think there's an English version of it yet. I think my friend Daniel that I played it with, they got it from Japan. Hopefully it does come in the English version soon. I think it'll be really good. I think people will enjoy it.
Yeah, I like the art on it. Like, 'cause I'm looking it up right now too. Like, it's really simplistic. And just like the colors are really nice. It looks really great.
It's very pleasing and cute. Little goats.
And it's the same designer as Yokohama, and that's one of our favorite games. So I'm sure this would fit really nicely into the collection too.
Yeah. Okay, I'll stop talking about things I've played recently. I've just played a lot.
I feel like those both, like, just from the way you described them though, those both seem like they fit in the theme though too.
They do. I'd say they're a little bit on the lighter end of what I sort of admire in these simple games. I think, there's an interesting balance between simplicity and like pared down rules. I think. Don't know where I was going with my thought with that. Let's just move on. Forget that I started that thing.
It happens to me a lot. Keegan, do you got any that you were?
Yeah, I do. I got some stuff. I'll start with
great.
like when we recorded the first time. I'll start with my weird one. That is the more controversial one. I think Food Chain Magnate relatively fits into this idea of simple rules but emergent gameplay, because really Food Chain is not that hard to grasp rules wise, because it really is just each card tells you exactly what it does. Every turn you're putting your cards out in a pyramid with the actions you want to take. You do your cards' actions, and then it's dinner time, and that's the game. And like the hardest part of the game is figuring out, if your person hasn't played it before, is figuring out which order is gonna get fulfilled first and how the routing works. But you just have someone that knows how to play the game there to show, like, this is how the route's gonna work, this is how many spaces away it is, and this is your spaces plus your cost to see either to break ties, or if someone uses like the luxury price manager and all that stuff. It's really not all that complicated. I think for the most part, like the big 6 of the Splatter games aren't really too insane with the rules. When it comes to other games, like if you compare like the Splatter games to like a Lacerda or to, oh gosh, Feudum or like any of like bigger like or any of the T games even, like those games have a lot of systems going on and a lot of rules, but they all kind of click. But Splatter games, I feel like they have like 2 or 3 systems max in the game, and
they don't have anything extra.
No, exactly.
Not necessary.
I think the only one that probably might be a bit like, okay, that's a bit extra is like Road and Boats, because there's so much micromanaging in that game where like you have to move your donkey this many spaces, but then your geese can follow you maybe, but if the geese are alone, they can breed. Like it's a bunch of really weird small things. But like Bust is super simple. You take as many actions as you want in a turn, but you have a limited amount of actions for the whole game. Great Zimbabwe isn't really too bad once you figure out how the market works, or like you have to go here if this one's out.
And the same thing with that and Food Chain Magnet is just the pathing can be a little bit hard to, like it's not difficult, but if you don't know what you're looking at, it can be difficult to see.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's my like big weird one of borderline easier rules, but
I would say I think it's really good. I think it's, and I've used it in the same way. It's one of my all-time top favorite games. I'm not going to say it's a bad game and I don't like it. But I've used it definitely because people, like friends of mine that aren't necessarily playing as many games as I do, and when they come over and they're like, look at a wall of 200 games, and they're like, oh, what game's good? I'm like, I don't know. Like, depends on what you want to play. And then if they ask, oh, what's like one of your favorite games? I'm never afraid to bring out Food Chain Magnet. If they're interested and they're willing to play a 2 or 3 hour game, I know that most people will get it after the first round. Once you understand, the process is very simple, and as you say, everything cards, like you just fire every card. Like, this one gets you to high person, make a burger, put an advertising up. Like it's really not difficult. And then I'm there to make everything work for them. It's not hard to understand what you're doing, and it's also not hard to understand when you do bad, why you did bad.
Right.
Like, people don't get frustrated. Like yes, you can lose on turn 2. Really, I suppose you can get behind and you can't catch up. But you always feel like you're doing something.
Yep.
And no one's gonna feel like terrible about that.
Yeah, I think the thing that makes like Food Chain Magnet and I think just Splatter games in general shine, and then we can stop talking about Splatter because I feel like I could gush about them forever. But their games, you're never fighting the game. You're always fighting with the people around the table, which I think is great, because there's some games where there's just like, even some of the Lisseri games that I like, there's some of the mechanics are just like so integrated and so much going on that it almost becomes like a struggle. Like, well, I can't do this because I can't do this because the system doesn't let me do this, and I'm fighting the rules now. Whereas Splatter games, you know the rules straight up, and it's just fighting the people around you. And I think that's what makes Splatter as great as they are.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example, Egan. What's your first one, Ryan? What have you got for us?
Actually, Glory to Rome. I had my whole transition thing was us transitioning to our topic, but Glory to Rome was my one of my first ones that I thought of. But one I think that I had brought up last time, a smaller card game, Arboretum. Super simple. Just on your turn, you're drawing a card, playing a card, discarding a card, and that's it. You're just trying to build up your trees in a certain in front of you, but it becomes so much once people start realizing what's going on and realizing, oh hey, I need to hold on to cards so that I can score. I need to hold on to my opponent's cards so they can't get it, while also playing down cards and discarding, and it's just like you see this click that they have when they're understanding what's going on, but then at the same time that realization of like, fuck, I don't know what to do right now because I can't I want all these cards in my hands right now, like I don't want to get rid of any of them, and they're just like, there's always that realization in the game, and you're just like, oh my god, there's so much that I have to think about and like try to manage here, that this is not just me building up, I'm getting lucky and trying to get some cards. This is really playing with my opponent here, and a huge like 3-way game going on in your head.
And I think with games like that, particularly simple card games, if your best action seems to be, I'd rather do nothing. I don't want to take any of these actions. I think that shows a really well developed and balanced game. That you're like, I don't want to do any of these things. If I just do nothing, my situation's going to be just as good, and I don't have to agonize over it. It's great to see people playing. I think Arboretum for the first time. It's fun to watch them, as you say, watch the gears grind when they like put down cards and they're like, oh. And then just the indecision is more based on not the game, but again, I think as Keegan was saying about the spotter games, like it's about what cards you're giving to other people, and it's that interaction between each other, less so than the puzzle of the game in front of you. It's more, I need to also be watching out what other people are doing.
I can't.
You don't want to give anyone anything.
I can't even think about how many times. I think this happens almost every time I've played Arboretum. And we used to, like last year and a half ago, when I was still hosting an event at a bar, and we would just have downtime beforehand. There were so many nights we would just bust out and play like a game or two of Arboretum with some friends before like the bar night started. And every game, there's always been like 2 or 3 rounds where the same card gets picked up and discarded by every player, because everyone's like, no one wants this card, but it's the easy just like get rid of card because no one wants it, so just pick it up, put it down, and then you're good. So I think that goes into what you were saying, Hammond, but like just do nothing, just taking a card and putting it right back. That's your nothing turn.
Every time teaching somebody that game, they're just like, I don't want to do anything because I can't give you any of these.
I think a good transition, because what you were saying, Hammond, about like the agonizing, I don't want to do anything, all these decisions are bad for me. Another game that fits this, I think I brought up last time, is Hanami Koji. I feel like that's another solid, simple card game where some turns you're like, you have 4 actions you have to do in a round, and there's always one of those actions like, I really don't want to do this, because it's an I cut you choose type of game. So your opponent gets to take cards, and there's some choices you make where you have to put down 3 cards on the table, and all 3 cards you put on the table are ones you do not want your opponent to take, but it's the last action you have and you have to do it. That's another really solid, like really small, quick card game. We played Arkham with our two of our friends that are like our family to us. We played 4-player Arkham, and that lasted 2.5, 3 hours. And then we were done with that, and then we were talking about other games we want to play later. And then our friend Chris was like, what's that small game there? It was Hanami Koji. He took it off the table, taught it to him in 5 minutes. 2 rounds in, he just goes, I don't want to do any of this. So how fast, like, the level of gameplay just like clicked for someone, that was the quickest ever. It's such a solid little game.
And that's why those games do shine, I think. And if we talk back on, compare that to like a Vital Lacerda or a Feudum or something, by 15 minutes in, you're still like halfway through a teach on one of those games, but you can already be up to those crunchy, interesting points in one of these lighter, or not necessarily rules light games, because you can teach them in 5 minutes and just get people in there, and then they can explore it themselves. They don't need to understand anything more.
Ohanami is a little bit like that too. It's just super simple. You're picking 2 cards and you're trying to make sure you don't get these huge gaps in numbers, but also wanting to like decide, do I take the flower ones now, or do I go with all like the water right now because they're going to be most points right now throughout the game, and but I can't let them. I can't pass on these flowers because I see what they can do, and it's just like, you got to look almost like where you're passing your cards to say, I could be taking these, but if I just take these 2 other, they're still going to benefit me, but what I'm passing to my opponent is going to hurt them more than what I'm gaining by not taking the 2 cards. It's almost like with these, it's the super simple rules, but then it just becomes about your opponent, like we were saying, and it's just like, how do you play them? And that's where it really becomes interesting, and like so many different thoughts start clicking, and just like, okay, how am I playing this? Do I want to do this now? It's so much more emerges from it.
I think that leads really well into my game here I'd like to bring up, which is Skull, or Skull and Roses as it used to be called. A very simple, like a distillation of the bluffing game genre. All you have to do is play a card down or make a bid, basically, of how many coasters. They are like bar coasters, aren't they? That you have to flip over without hitting a skull, just starting with all of your own. And you can pretty much explain it as you go, and the realization dawns on people. But yeah, it becomes just about playing other people, laying traps for other people to come after you. Really interesting bluffing game. We actually discussed this last time we recorded, and then we went and played it on TTS.
Right,
Because was it just you, Keegan, that hadn't played before?
Right.
Yeah. And yeah, it definitely works better in person. But no, it's such a great little game, and really interesting, especially when people get into the double think and really trying to draw other people in, rather than just trying to win themselves, just trying to knock other people out. Which
I think for that it's so much more fun trying to play the opponent and getting them to, like, when doing the betting, to trick them into maybe going one step, like bidding one step ahead of you, knowing that, like, you have the skull out on your side, and you're like just trying to trick them, and like that timing of when to bet a little higher, when not to, and the difference between like a 4 and a 5 is it's huge.
The difference between this is pretty doable and this is almost impossible.
And then and you go, there's so many times I'm just like, all right, I think I got this. I'm gonna bet this number, thinking that someone will probably go at least one number above me, and then no one does, and I'm like, oh fuck, screwing myself over in this whole thing. And
I think a lot of just like those simple, smaller, like bluffing games are really conducive to just like simple rules and emerging gameplay. I just think that any game that has a lot of player interaction just inevitably leads to great emerging gameplay, because like you hear the rules, like this is nothing, but the interaction's what makes it. Like Coup, I think is another like, I think it's another like gateway game for some people because it's just been around for forever, or like the Resistance. But like I love Coup. I like busting that out every once in a while and just having a game of like, you have 2 rolls, but you can do any role that you want. You're just trying to lie about it and start going with it. It's another game that like I used to go to bars with us too a lot just to play that.
One under that, like the social deduction, I think that we've recently played was the Blood on the Clock Tower. I think it's one of the better deduction ones that kind of allow for this, because when it's like all the other social deduction, it's pretty easy. You have your role and you're just trying to like figure it out. But there is the whole like aspect of actually trying to like have secret conversations separately with people, and it almost like creates more of that interesting deduction that you're trying to do when you're like, okay, they're talking secretly, whereas like Secret Hitler or Resistance, everyone's just kind of out in the open, right? We're all just talking and just blaming each other, whereas where Blood on the Clock Tower, you'll have your actual narrator for the story, and they can kind of sway some of it depending on how it's going, and can really kind of change up and make maybe lead to other things that weren't necessarily expected. Or it's just like it's kind of like when we're doing it, it's just like watching certain groups go off and talk by themselves. You're like, that's a little more suspicious, and after the information that I know, and so I think that one I found is a really interesting deduction one that has led to like more thinking than some other ones.
Yeah, totally. Go ahead, Amy.
I think. Sorry. I was just going to say, with Blood on the Clock Tower, as long as you've got a really good narrator, it doesn't matter the experience of the other players. It's like a good DM for any role-playing session, really. If they can guide the players through, they don't necessarily need to know what's going on. Well, they do need to know what's going on, but they don't necessarily need to know all the rules and the mechanics, and they can focus on that interaction between each other.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think that's where most games shine, as we're kind of alluding to with most of these things, is the game is just a background for player interaction.
Yeah, and that's like, I wanted to bring another game up that, because we were talking about, I was like, it doesn't fit the simple rules thing at all, but like the player interaction, that's what leads to the gameplay. PAX Premier 2nd Edition, that's entirely that game. Like,
yeah.
Even then, the rules aren't horrible. If you can understand how scoring works, that's the weirdest rule in the whole game, is the scoring mechanic. And that, if you understand that, you have the rest of the game down, no problem. But like that game, you hear it and you're like, there's like a board, and then your tableau becomes like a secondary board that connects to everybody else. Okay, got it. This isn't really going to be much. You only get to do 2 things on each turn. Okay, but then you see it, like the whole idea of like you can switch roles and side with somebody else and be their temporary partner, and then just like backstab and become a role, like a different role. There leads so much like just player interaction, just staring each other down. Like, you and I are good right now, but what's going to happen 2 turns from now? Like, just the interaction in that game's amazing. I love that game.
Yeah, definitely not simple. If anyone's listening to this and is unsure, don't pick up PAX Premier 2nd Edition unless you're sure.
No,
it's a great game. I agree with you, but it is not.
It's not
easy.
Simple, no.
And but it is worth. It's worth the investment if it appeals to you, though. Don't let me turn you off it, but don't just. You're like, oh, that interaction sounds great. I'm going to go do that. It's not super easy.
I think it's a game everyone should play once just to experience it and see if it's something they like.
You need to play it at least twice.
At least twice, yeah.
At least twice. That just because there is so much with that game, and for me too, a little bit, it didn't fully click until the second game. And just because it's just like with the rules, it can get a little weird and confusing, and it just, some things might not click right away, and even still with the second game, you're like, okay, I'm getting this a little more, but good lord, there's still quite a bit to really try to master here. And
yeah,
I think with Oath coming out now as well, which if you consider Root as an approachable version of a coin style game, I think Oath is really that approachable version of a PAX style game from Cole Worley, who did Root as well. I am concerned. I played Oath last year in pre-production format, just before it went up on Kickstarter. I really enjoyed it, but I'm concerned that a lot of people that love Root are going to get it because of the design pedigree and are not going to enjoy the game because it's
very different.
It is not. It's a very different style of game than a lot of people have played before. I think some people will enjoy it and they will maybe gravitate towards the PAX systems and then go into your PAX Premiers and Porphyrianas and Renaissance, and that's great. But I think some people are going to bounce off Oath and be. I'm worried that they're going to be disappointed because they're just getting into it because of this is the same guy that did Root, and the art's really cute again. So let's get into that without.
Yeah.
We'll see. Hopefully, lots of people. I hope that isn't the case. I hope lots of people like it and like to play it.
Yeah.
But I'm slightly concerned. Back on topic.
Yeah.
So tangents. That's our thing. I'd like to discuss the estates, which I think really exemplifies what we're talking about here. On your turn, all you do is pick a thing on the board and auction it to everyone at the table, and it's just a once-around auction. If it gets back to you, you can opt to sell that item to whoever made the highest bid or match their bid and take it off them instead, and then put it on the board somewhere. That's the whole game. And there's only $12 per player, $12 million per player. And it just goes around and around. No new money ever comes in. But you can take money out by embezzling it into your company, which is just putting it in front of you. It's not a weird 18xx style company action or anything like that. Just taking $1 million out of the game that becomes a point for you. But it just means the game gets tighter as it goes on. And because you can see when someone's down to $2 or $3, it's like, well, they can't afford to bid on anything, because if you run out of money, then you are really screwed in the estates.
we talked about it before, and I was like, I saw your post about you playing it and you gushing about it, and I was like, man, I really regret that I got rid of my copy. Which it's not that hard to find it anymore, but I'm super excited to actually get that one to the table. And just the idea of sliding $1 million check under the board to embezzle it is great. It appeals to me a lot.
I mean, yeah, you were teaching me it before your before the bingo night one time.
Yeah.
Then we never ended up playing. Yeah.
It just the production of the game is just super nice too. Like it's just super eye catching with all the blocks. Mm-hmm. Love that one.
Even the original version, Neue Heimat, the German one from I know early 2000s, mid 2000s. Like even that was quite striking with its little blocks as little red domes as well. But yeah, the Capstone production, they've definitely done a really nice job at making that pop on the table.
Usual Capstone business, making everything look super nice.
Mm-hmm. There's one game that I was thinking about this, and I was trying to think of how much it actually falls under Emergent, but a very, very simple, like, basic worker placement game, Lords of Waterdeep. Probably one of the ones that is considered just like that basic introduction into worker placement. But this, like with Lords of Waterdeep, I think the actual placement, the timing of placement of your workers becomes a little bit more important than in maybe some other ones, where some other ones you're just kind of going places, getting the resources. Yeah, you're doing that in Waterdeep, but with Waterdeep, I think the resources are a bit more restricted, and it's a lot harder to get some of the colored cubes. That timing and first player marker become really important. And trying to figure out when your opponents want to be going to those spots and when to build buildings, and then deciding if you're trying to use your own buildings or waiting and allowing other people to use it.
And I think you're right with the buildings, Ryan, that's where that extra level of gameplay does come in. Mm-hmm. Whether you want to go to someone's building, great, you're gonna get some wizards / purple cubes. Mm-hmm. But do you really want to give $1 to your opponent to do that? Is it worth that to you? Mm-hmm. And as you were saying, or is it worth leaving your own buildings open, hoping someone's going to go and use your attractive ability and give you a bonus at the same time, or are they just going to leave it and then no one goes there and no one's benefited?
Yeah. So think about because it's easy, one of the easiest work placements, right? It's just you're going to the different buildings and you're completing your quests, you're done. But yeah, the whole timing and trying to figure out what your opponent is trying to do, I think is just a little bit more. There's a bit more of it than say in Architects of the West Kingdom, whereas that one's you're just trying to basically do a better. You're just trying to not necessarily outplay your opponent, but just have a better strategy wise, and you don't really have to worry about going to a spot before someone else does, or holding off a spot for your opponents to go to it. Yeah. So maybe
I got one more.
Okay.
That I want to
go for it.
Again, like this one is really just your rule. The rules are you play a card on your turn, and you have your cards. You have 3 options with your cards for the most part. And Ginkopolis, where that one is somewhat a drafting game in a way too, because you pick a card from your hand that you want to play, but then whatever you have left in your hand, you pass to your opponent. So it becomes do I take this because this is good for me, or do I take this because it's better for my opponent and I should take this so they don't have a chance to use it? Which is why I think Ginkopolis works best as a 2-player game, because you know exactly what you're passing, you know exactly, for the most part, what you're going to get back in a round. And with Emergent gameplay, you're legitimately building the board in front of you while you're playing the game too. Like the game gets wider and taller while you're playing, while you're putting your tiles down, trying to make districts of matching colors. And then at the end of the game, whoever has the most influence in a district, they score points for every influence marker on that district, so including your opponents. And then whoever's in second place only score for themselves. And that game goes so quick. It doesn't take that long to teach. Just show what the cards do, and then what the basic actions are. And the only other weird thing about the game is you're also somewhat building like a tableau as well, because if you do a certain action, you might have a card in your tableau that gives you an additional bonus, and that might be the only thing that would be like, if you want to teach this game to like newer people into the hobby, like teaching those two things separately might be a better idea of like, this is how the game works. Then also look at your cards at the bottom. They will give you a benefit later. The fact that it's now reprinted and the reprint's officially released, and I know it's been out of print for forever, finally people can pick it up and see how great it is.
I can't wait for I just checked. My copy will hopefully be here next week.
Yay!
Somehow I missed Ginkopolis when it first came out in 2012 or 2013, whenever it was around. I don't know, dismissed it for some reason. I think that I was in a weird state of my board game collection there. But now that I've kind of refined what I like and what I'm looking for, Ginkopolis sounds like it really sits within my within my wheelhouse. And like I selfishly brought up this topic for today, and most of my favorite games all sort of sit within this very either simple rules or what I call chunky rules, which, you're opposite of your very like fiddly Euro or more. I don't know if I'm just a jaded old man. Older man. No, I'm not that old.
Well, we always can just go back to the feudum example of like, that one's just, there's one action there's 18 different things to possibly do, and you're just like, okay, yeah, you're just gonna have to play this because there's so much here, and we're just gonna keep learning as you're going. Really, that's
right. Yeah, and it's exemplified a lot by many newer games in the last 5 years or so, where things seem to be complex for the sake of complexity, but don't actually add anything to the experience. Where you go back, you look at Ginkopolis, that's almost 10 years old now. Hans Teutonica that I mentioned earlier that I played recently, The Estates, even Babylonia, which is a new game, but a distillation of older Reiner Knizia stuff like Through the Desert. It's just on your turn, you do one of two things, or you have two very simple actions, or you can do one thing and it seems to mean nothing. And then the game is built from there rather than saying, here's 15 things you can do. Now make the right decision. And you have to better understand how they all interlock before you make one of those choices.
You don't love that? I love that.
I think I'm slowly getting to the point where I'm more going to what to Hammond, what you've been saying. Like, I'm finding, like, I used to be that rulebook geek where I'm like, I love just sitting down and reading a rulebook, trying to figure out how the mechanism works and all this stuff. And like, the more I'm in the hobby now, the more I'm like, if there's a game that's like really complex, it's something about it needs to really appeal to me for me to keep it or even pick it up at this point. Like, I had Tekkenu and Tawa Tenseiyu and what was the one that you like, Ryan?
Teotihuacan?
Teotihuacan. Yep, I had all those games, and then I was like, I don't think I want these, and I got rid of them all. So there's like very few games that are like rules heavy or like upfront rules that are just like a rules dump that I like still. But the more and more I'm leaning towards like, I just want a game where I can sit and read the rules in 10 minutes and start playing the game, and me agonize about the decisions I have to make and not agonize about the decisions the game is telling me to make.
Yeah.
I see. I like the puzzle behind trying to find out how all these mechanisms interlock with each other, and then going, okay, where's my best strategy with what the other players are kind of doing, and just trying to find out that puzzle of the way the game is designed and finding that best possible solution. I tend a lot in those ones. They tend to click with me a lot quicker than probably Keegan and Max. Like, looking at some of the Lacerda games and stuff, for me, they all click pretty quickly, and I go, oh, okay, yeah, I'm starting to see everything's starting to come together, and I'm understanding like, okay, I need to go do this to do this, and then do this. Okay, I got my multiple turns ahead. So to me, it's just like this nice, interesting like puzzle that just really gets my brain going.
Yeah, and I can see there's definitely satisfaction in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like much more of like a tactical player. Like I like playing in the moment. Like what do I need to do right now, and not plan like 18 turns ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Like which is as much as like we brought it up a bunch of times already. But even Feudum, as fiddly and crazy as it is with the rules, like that game is for the most part pretty tactical because you don't know where your opponents are going to go in the turn. You're pre-programming your actions for the round.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you pick 4 actions, you can do whatever you want, but those are the only 4 you can do that round. And you have to think about what your opponents are going to do so you know that what you're trying to do will actually work. I like when the rules lead to thought processes like that, not just like, I need to find the right puzzle piece to make this whole thing mesh to make the gears turn. Like, I'm kind of over that at this point, which I might be also jaded now, but who knows?
No, and I don't like that distinction that probably the people that are a bit more strategic in their thinking and want to have a look at the game as an overall probably do lend towards Ryan's thinking in wanting, they want to understand the mechanisms and understand how they interlock and work within those boundaries. Mm-hmm. And I probably do lean a bit more like yourself towards tactical gameplay decisions, just like, oh, whatever feels right at the time, rather than I want to do this halfway down the track. Mm-hmm. The games where you do have, it comes to your turn, it's like, oh, what do you want to do? You can just do these 2 things. Like, oh yeah, this feels right to do right now. That's where, yeah, probably you and I both lie, Keegan, on that those sort of simple rules make it a bit more satisfying tactical gameplay loop.
I think you're gonna love Ginkopolis then, because a lot of that game is like seeing what the board state is and how you're gonna adjust it. Like nothing feels better in that game than blowing up someone's district and like,
I mean, that one
totally cutting it off. It feels so good.
I really love Ginkopolis, and it's the whole Emergent thing is just like, as this thing is growing in front of you, but like you're doing it together with everybody there, and it's again kind of what we've been saying with all these games. It's not so much just about the games, the mechanisms. It's how you're playing the opponent, knowing what cards is already on a table, what they may want. Ones you like, shit, maybe I just need to hate draft this round because they could just like, I need, like they could just blow up my district that I have a whole bunch of stuff in, and yeah, it's there's a lot more than just the simple tile laying and just trying to get some influence out in a better strategic way than your opponent. But no, now you need to actually play it against your opponent.
And you also don't know what your opponent has because all your resources are behind a screen, so even better.
Yeah. I had one more game that it's been a long time since I played, but it was one that Dan really likes, and it was really interesting. El Grande. It's pretty simple. I think, like, from remembering it, you start the turn and everyone's kind of like betting on the cards that they like, the turn order type thing. You're just kind of betting on cards, and then it's just a simple area control game. But it's what became really interesting, more than just kind of like controlling some of the board, was the playing my opponents and trying to get the card at the right time, the turn order at the right time of when I needed it to do my things.
And also that thing where you're deciding when you're doing that draft of the cards, as well as being turn order, it's like, do I want more people, which will give me more control, or do I want a more influential power to do something, which is a really nice trade-off as well.
Yeah, and I think, so I think that's where I actually had a lot of fun with the game, was actually like, trying to understand, and like going back and forth, playing your opponent, understanding when you want to take those powers, right, or more people, or it was an interesting one that like wasn't particularly in my wheelhouse or like the ones I tend towards, but found that I was really enjoying it.
And for people, if you like I know El Grande is one of those games that a lot of people talk about. I think it's a really great area control game from like the mid '90s. It's a Wolfgang Kramer game, I think, from memory.
I don't know.
He's done a lot of things. Half the designer on Azul, some other things, Kramer and Keeson. Anyway, so it's come in and out of print a lot. They did a big box edition maybe 5 or 6 years ago. The problem being, I have the big box edition, and I never play with anything except for the base game. I've played it so many times, but the game itself is enough in its like original form for the most part. But it is coming to Board Game Arena very soon. I think it's in alpha at the moment. And I think even the big box is still hard to find these days because it's one of those games people just seem to buy and keep. It doesn't really circulate around very much, but if anyone does want to try it, it is coming to Board Game Arena really soon.
Okay.
I think, I'm pretty sure it's in alpha at the moment.
Okay. Awesome. Well, it's coming up to about, it is an hour now. Was there any other maybe honorable mentions for this that people could check out? I was thinking Bruges. Bruges is pretty easy, but has some interesting depth to it.
I think in general you can't go wrong. With some of those earlier Feld games. Feld did Bruges, didn't he? Yeah. Yep. Also, pretty much anything before 2005 is probably going to find. Just that's what the style was at the time. So many of those Knizia auction games really have that distilled play experience as well.
Yeah.
Seven Wonders Duel, and then Antique or Antique 2, I think, are other good ones. The Antique was the one we played with Dan. The rules are really easy on those, and it's a very big board, and it looks fun to be on this big board, put dudes down on the map, but it's just really, really straightforward gameplay.
No, I didn't realize. I've looked at it previously, and I thought it looked more complicated than it is. Obviously, so
it's not that bad at all. Like, I think Dan taught it to us in like 15 minutes, if even, and then we just started going. And after the first round, like, got it. I see how this works. It's great.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, Hammond, thanks for joining us. Rejoining us.
Yeah, thanks. I'm always happy to be here and chat with you.
We're gonna. I think we brought this up last time too, but I'm gonna hold our topic of econ games to the next time you can come on, because I really want to talk economy games with you.
Oh, let's do that. That sounds great. Okay,
great. Yeah. Is there anything that you want to tell people watching?
No, nothing too interesting. If anyone wants to find me, you can find me at Hamface on Instagram and Twitter, and Board Game Geek, I suppose, as well. If you, I don't know, want to look at my collection, I don't know. I don't know how useful it is to know someone's Board Game Geek ID. If anyone's around Ballarat in July, I'm doing a musical theatre production. I'm in We Will Rock You, music of Queen. I think we've still got all flights suspended into the country, so no one can come. But if you're local and want to come, let me know.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, and everyone, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.